Welcome to Smart Manufacturing Mindset, where we challenge guests to think differently about manufacturing. We'll explore the nuances that hide in plain sight behind the acronyms, techno jargon, and misinformation to get to the truths that hold real value for real people in the industry.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mike Yost. I am your host. I'm glad you could join us here today for the next installment of the CESMII Smart Manufacturing Mindset LinkedIn Live series, where in every episode we challenge ourselves and our guests to think differently about smart manufacturing. We challenge ourselves to think differently because we believe it's time to stop asking what smart manufacturing is and start defining what it means for each one of us. You can tell I'm not in my normal environment. We have a special off-site event today. I just sat through a panel session with a couple of small manufacturing companies that are going through the CESMII Smart Manufacturing Acceleration Framework work to create their own digital strategic roadmap. The event is moderated by Sophia Long, who is the manager of innovation and industry for Team NEO and the leader of the smart manufacturing cluster here in Northeast Ohio, my hometown, where this event is located today. She's joined on stage with two manufacturers, Doug Keehan, plant manager from Advanced Polymer Coatings, and with Mark Dawson, who is the president of Cleveland Steel Tool. Also on stage is Jim Wetzel, friend of the show, friend of CESMII, and the creator of the CESMII Acceleration Framework tools themselves. It was a fantastic conversation, and really looking forward to you getting to draw from them and learn from what they talk about and taking control for themselves of defining what smart manufacturing means for them. So obviously this is a little different setup than we normally have. We're not online right now to take your questions and respond in real time. However, the good thing about this medium is that it affords us the opportunity that this can be the start of the conversation. So feel free to add comments and questions as you watch this, and we'll get the conversation, keep the conversation going online beyond this event. So with that, I'd just say a couple of things for you. First of all, if you do not know CESMII, I would encourage you to get to know them. Check them out online at cesmi.org. Follow them on LinkedIn. And if you go online, you'll see that they have information about the projects they do, the research they drive, membership options, all of those things. You should understand the type of ecosystem that they are building by supporting events like this and the work that they're doing with companies like Advanced Polymer Coatings and Cleveland Steel Tool. We would not be able to build this ecosystem if it weren't for events like this, which is sponsored by, co-sponsored by SME. So we want to thank them for being our partner. You're able to find this event and any of our previous events on Apple Music and Spotify, so you can stream those. And I would encourage you, we typically run these events on the last Tuesday of every month, so I encourage you to check us out next month. When you think about smart manufacturing, think differently.
I'm Sophia Lum, a manager of industry and innovation over at Team NEO. A big part of my role is managing the smart manufacturing cluster. And so we are a smart manufacturing cluster. It's a platform that helps manufacturers and the region grow and develop their technical capabilities, which in turn makes the region more competitive. So I am thrilled to moderate this panel with our guests here. We've heard a lot of trends throughout the morning, including how do you develop how do you develop your own solutions when you have such a unique process, as well as like how do you onboard, how do you start this transformation? And so we have a couple different perspectives from our panel here, and I think that they can speak to their experiences. So I'd like to start off by just having our panel introduce themselves. We'll go into some questions, and then at the end, we'll open up for some Q&A. Perfect.
I'm Dawson. I'm the president of the Cleveland Steel Tool Company. We are about a 116-year-old manufacturer of punches and dies on the east side of Cleveland. And so we face a lot of the challenges that you've heard about this morning. I have a lot of older machines, a very experienced workforce that knows everything that won't work, trying to bring new ideas and new ways of doing things in the shop.
Doug Keehan, Advanced Polymer Coatings. We're in Avon. We're run into this from a standpoint of we're putting in a new processing line. And if this is industry 4.0, we're probably industry 1.1 coming from where we started from. So a little bit different from where Mark's coming from, but kind of thrust into this. So for some of you, it would make it a little overwhelming. Can certainly appreciate where you're coming from. But I think what you'll hear from this conversation will help you understand that we're all in this together.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I'm Jim Wetzel, founder of NxGen Group. And in that role, my job is to actually help figure out how to help all of you folks in this digital journey, coming from a manufacturing perspective. So prior to starting this NxGen Group, I was the interim CEO of CESMII. So I launched CESMII in 2017-18, and then had John Dyke. I hired John to replace me. And prior to that, I was director of engineering at General Mills for 32 years, responsible for improving the existing asset base across the globe. So I had maintenance, reliability, system engineering, energy, sustainability, continuous improvement, instrumentation, automation, and the technical infrastructure across all of the factories. And in this NxGen Group role, one of the first things I was asked to do by CESMII was put together a process to help manufacturers figure out their digital strategy.
So I know in my previous life as a reliability engineer, I would have appreciated a lot of the tools and developments that have happened, especially as we're talking about legacy equipment and innovations regarding legacy equipment. So I know, Mark, the Cleveland Steel Tool is about halfway through the roadmap journey. How are you approaching integration of updated technologies with your legacy systems and assets?
We have a combination of newer CNC machines and older, and in some cases much older, machinery that we want to integrate. We have a engineering and operations team. We have an ISO program. We have ERP. We have CRM, CAD, CAM. And how do we put all of that together in trying to create a digital plan for the company? And that was what led me to the CESMII roadmap program. Is we had so many initiatives. How does our continuous improvement and 5S integrate with some of the automation efforts we're trying to make? And so that's what we're trying to do in this roadmap program, is prioritize all the different initiatives and tie them all together.
That's awesome. So as you're going through that process, is it taking your, shaping the direction of your business in a certain way, or how is it affecting the direction that you guys are taking?
The number one benefit for us is prioritization, is where should we focus our efforts? Some of the lessons from this morning: crawl, walk,
Yes.
run. Don't put the technology first, put the people first. I've got some engineers here, and that's the number one takeaway already today, is put the people first, and then find how the technology can help them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know I've always heard, don't put the cart in front of the horse. I think that is incredibly applicable to the journey of building out your digital capabilities as well. So, Doug, so could you share how Advanced Polymer Coatings developed its roadmap for new product lines and what challenges you faced in bringing these innovations to market?
Sure. So we're primarily a batch processing. We're an industrial coatings company. A lot of our stuff was just basically developed back in the 80s, and we just haven't had the opportunity to change and/or the incentive. What was working, that old adage, don't change it if it's working, right? So we kept along with that. And then as the business continues to grow, we recognize that the processes that we have currently, the equipment that we have, is getting a bit dated. If we were going to make the investment, we could continue on in batch processing the way we do, or we can look at newer technology. The newer technology was nothing that any of us were familiar with internally, so we started to reach outside, and one of the comments that you've heard all along today is utilize your network, right? So through a series of conversations with different people utilizing the network, we ended up getting connected with Jim through Mike and Mike through other people. Excellent resources being your local community colleges, Cleveland State, et cetera. So all this brought together these people who were into the space, very familiar with the newer technology and how to utilize it and benefit it to us, not only in how we process and manufacture our coating, but also what other benefits could it bring to the table in regard to how we run our business. And what does the transformation of taking the data and incorporating it into other areas within our company. So that was really what sparked the interest. We were really, like I said, a batch process, had very little automation at all. Looking at newer technology, and Mike and Jim have been the Sherpas in the process for us, helping to guide us along the way. And the roadmap has been a phenomenal tool to, as Mark had mentioned, to try and help you focus on what are the things that you really need to be looking at, right? You've heard several people talk about it today with regard to people, process, and technology. And notice that that third one, as Mark stressed, was technology's last. And out of all the conversations that were had this morning, all the presentations that were made, I was noting how many people were saying the same thing, right? And that's a very key aspect. And driving the people first, obviously, is a key element as well.
So, no, I think that's great. And it really reiterates a lot of the things that we have been hearing today. And so I know that as you guys are adding new product lines versus using legacy equipment, Mark, would you agree with some of those challenges that Doug is facing, or are there other challenges that you would say affect the legacy equipment?
Yeah, very, very different situations, but the same types of challenges. That my older mills are still productive machines for us. How do we incorporate them into a plan that's also using the brand new state-of-the-art CNC machines?
Yep, got it. Great. And so, Jim, I did not forget about you. So how does NxGen Group guide manufacturers that are at different stages of readiness when it comes to digital transformation?
Well, just play this back about what we heard today. We've heard about crawl, walk, and run. We've heard about having a plan before you actually act, have technology be an enabler but not be the leader, right, and all that. And quite frankly, my biggest job is to break old habits. So I think about small, medium companies. You've got brilliant people that are entrepreneurs that are made and wired to act. So this crawl, walk, run, they're wired to run. And you think about ready, aim, fire. When I talk to most of the people on my first go-around, they've already fired.
Yeah.
I go, what about ready and aim? Where'd that come from? Well, we're about execution. We're about moving forward. We're about making stuff happen. Hey, Jim, you come from a big company and you're used to bureaucracy and meetings and PowerPoints and month-long plans. We're doing it. We're doing it here in our world. And what's been super interesting is that when you look at the current data over the last couple of years in the smart manufacturing space, depending on what statistic you want to look at, but 70 to 90% of these projects are not succeeding. So you go, 70 to 90% of these projects are failing. Why is that? And I'd suggest the answer is what you heard already this morning. Don't start with run, start with crawl, walk, run. Don't start with execute, start with strategy. And so when I talk with these guys and in our first meetings, it's about breaking down this mindset that they've been used to be so successful in the business they're in, and then to say, wait a minute, we got to put strategy up front. We have to put true north up front. We have to develop your future state that you want to create up front before you're starting to pick solutions that may or may not get you there. And so that's actually quite a discussion to have.
Yeah.
Because they've been so successful operating their business with that mindset. And now we're asking them to change.
And if I can speak to that. So, and Jim's spot on. So in our situation, we knew we needed to grow. We weren't going to be able to do what we were doing in our existing facility. So we had identified the need as far as expanding our facility. And then on top of that, once we recognized, okay, we're going to make this investment to go ahead and put in this expansion. Then we went and looked at our process and said, well, if we're going to make the investment, what else can we do? What do we have the resources to do, whether it's finances, people, time, whatever, right? And so we said, okay, let's take a hard look at our process and see what the value add is for the investment. What's the ROI on that? And we said, okay, yep, we need to do that too. We want to go ahead and just take them both and get them in one fell swoop, so to speak. Well, then when we got exposed to really what we were getting into, and then, as I mentioned, utilizing our network to get in connection with the people, a lot of the people that are in this room, it made us to take a step back, because we had already started developing the new process line, ordering equipment, et cetera. But Jim comes in and goes, well, you guys are doing great. Bravo to you. And you are the typical entrepreneurial mindset company. You're jumping in, you're going full steam ahead, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And so, we had to pull back the reins a little bit and go, you know what, we haven't. And we've got a wealth of information sitting there coming out of will be coming out of the new process line. We haven't installed it yet, but Jim's been helped to give us clarity as to what else are you going to get from the benefit of having a new line. Not only in the end result of the production, but what else is it going to be capable of adding to your business? And so, absolutely, the instinct for small businesses, medium-sized businesses to just execute, as he said, go ahead and start firing and hope you hit the target somewhere along the line. These guys bring the discipline in place to try and just take a step back, slow it down a little bit. You're going to work at whatever pace you want to work at. They're not here to slow you down. They're just trying to help guide you through the process in a way that you're making fewer mistakes, less, oh man, I should have thought about that, 6 steps ago, right? And so that's where, as I mentioned, the Sherpas in the room to help guide us through the process and make fewer mistakes. And it's been dramatic in our case because we did exactly take that approach. We started firing straight away before we really started planning.
Yeah, and the same thing. The roadmap that we are completing is not the CESMII roadmap. It is my roadmap. It is the objectives that I have as president, but that included input from virtually every person in the organization, and then in-depth interviews with about half of the company to build our priorities and our plan for the digital future and the integration of the different systems and projects into the planning process.
Yeah, it seems like it's so curated to everybody's own experience, and the roadmap is there to help guide and have an on-ramp to the journey itself. And so as you're talking about a mindset shift, I'm sure there's a lot of self-discovery that has to go into this process. I guess, is there any comments that you guys would have on that self-discovery process, saying, you know what, we know our instincts are this, we want to shoot from the hip. How do you go through that self-discovery process?
You want to start?
Yeah, I will echo what both of you have already said. My inclination would be to tell the team, come on, let's get going. Fortunately, I have a couple engineers working with me who are accustomed to planning before they jump, and so that'll help with that process.
Yeah, and again, another theme that you've heard through several of the conversations and presentations that were had today was with regards to change management, right? And how to really take a disciplined approach to what you're trying to accomplish. And again, Jim's brought an area and a level of expertise in that, and a mindset shift, if you will, to be able to say, hey, you've got to take into consideration all these different factors as part of the overall scope. Otherwise, somewhere along the line, it's going to wake up this ugly beast, and it's going to, rear its head and say, hey, you forgot about me over here, and then you're going to have a bigger issue to deal with, right? So the management of change is a key element to it. And again, the framework with which the roadmap is laid out addresses all that. So if that's not a strength that your company may have, it's a discipline that you're going to end up just naturally be involved in as part of the process.
The only thing I would add to that is, this mindset shift, I would say, look in the mirror and ask yourself, how do you get it? How do you get digital? How did you get, as a manufacturer, how did you get safety? How did you get quality so that it became part of your DNA? And when you find somebody that really understands safety, really understands quality, when they walk through a factory for the first time, they see all these things. So if you ever walked a factory with somebody that's that's a maintenance reliability engineer, and you walk alongside of them, or an energy person, they can hear the air leaks in the air compressor. They can hear the bearing squeals. They can see the gaps on the windows. And when you're walking with them, you go, how do you see all that stuff? Well, I get it. I'm wired. I am wired to be digital. I have a digital mindset. What does that look like? When I see a piece of paper, I go, what are you doing with this? And someone said earlier, this is the death trap for data, is put it on paper, because you can't do anything with it, right? And so once you kind of get it, all of a sudden now these things you never saw before become opportunities. And you start thinking about things differently. And I look at, like, even in this safety, if you watched me go down a set of steps, I'm hanging onto the handrail, because it was grilled into me that that's where trips, slips, and falls happen. But everybody else is not touching the handrail. Maybe it's COVID related. You don't want to get germs and stuff, but it's like, I'm wired that way. I wear safety shoes when I mow the lawn, because it's like, I'm wired that way. And so on this digital transformation, one of the things what I've heard from doing excessive interviews across a lot of smart manufacturing leaders and companies that are leaders in this space, the biggest struggle they have is getting their leaders to get it. So they're pushing this rope saying, we should do this, we should do this. You're not sponsoring my effort. Do a pilot. Do a lighthouse. Do a something. So you're trying to convince me. Well, they're not getting it yet. And so this transformation, and this today has been just fabulous, listening to different companies. I hope everybody feels that way, because this has been a fabulous day. Listening to other leaders tell their story is another way to, quote, get it and get hooked into this mindset. Having a Cleveland-based collaborative circle where plant tours and all these offers going back and forth. Come to my place, I'll show you this. Come to my place, I'll show you that, is going to help strengthen the mindset and get it.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so important to understand that, hey, we could all look at digital capabilities, integrating technology, but dependent on our background, you look at it through a different lens. Mark, I love that you were mentioning how you had so many interviews with everybody in your company to say, hey, you know what, we want to take your perspective into account here as we develop our very unique roadmap, and how important it is to have all of those lenses so that you can find the right fit. So I know, as a reliability engineer, I know sometimes me and my inspection friends joke that, like, man, you can't go to Cedar Point without identifying all the things that are going wrong. So it's like but as you take all those different perspectives into curating your own roadmap, it really becomes what is the most applicable for you. And having these roadmaps through CESMII and Manufacturing Works is so important, just to get on into the process, and then you make that process your own. So with that in mind, a question for anyone is, how do you meet actually, this is more a question for Jim. So how do you meet companies where they are and adapt the roadmap to fit the roadmap process to fit their unique needs?
Yeah. So I was going to say this earlier, but I'll say it fits right now. I agree with almost everything Larry Megan said. So
Almost.
well, so Larry said, these companies need to be in charge of their own strategy. You don't need consultants at their doorstep. And I totally agree with that. That's right. So this meet them where they're at. In the acceleration framework, there is not a pre-canned answer to what the recipe should be for you. That's your job. What we have is the tools and a framework to figure out, here's where you are, and here's where I think I need to be for the business that I'm running. So there's no predisposition. And like Larry said, you know your own business. You're the ones that should be the experts in your business, not somebody else. Where I disagree just a little bit is that I can help you see that. I can help bring you to the table, put the mirror in front of your face and say, you do know that stuff, you just didn't articulate that you know that stuff, and I want to bring that out of you. But it's not my strategy, like Mark said. They're owning their strategy, and their recipe is their recipe. And the acceleration framework tools also help you figure out what's it worth. So if I was to take on that approach, am I going to 3x my sales? Am I going to increase my margins? Am I going to improve my quality? You know, what attribute of business success am I going to measure?
Yeah, no, I love that. Do either of you have comments on it?
No, I think that covers quite
Perfect.
well,
Yeah.
actually.
I mean, it is ours.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that is truly, it started as a very generic questionnaire. Lots of words, I didn't even know what they meant on it. But what came back after a couple iterations is ours.
Yes.
And you can read it and you know, this is not boilerplate.
Right. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And so shifting a little bit to something you guys were talking about earlier is understanding the full system. Don't just go straight to technologies, but I know the roadmap has 6 different elements in it. So can you share an anecdote that highlights how the full system approach, including planning and understanding, can drive better results?
Well, I think from the framework and the tools, it helps you uncover things that perhaps you might have, whether it's culture, whether it's legacy, whatever term you want to use, you may have a blind spot to that you weren't able to pick up on, that through the help of the series of, as Mark mentioned, there's an assessment that you're going to go through that not only, hopefully you get to disperse it to as many people within your organization as possible. But regardless, you're going to find this diversity of perspectives, right? Management has a certain perspective as to how effective they are in communication, for example, as opposed to the people who are actually on the floor. They see things a little bit differently. So it's, as Jim likes to say, it puts the mirror up there, and even though, the reflection at times, and certainly it's kind of human nature, you don't really want to look at the flaws too long, right? You kind of want to just observe and let those slip to the side. And I think that's what the process and the tools help to identify, is some of the areas where perhaps you're just either not paying attention, maybe you don't want to pay attention, whatever, but it's important and it's relevant. And so it brings to light some things and then helps you to then make sure you're focusing on the things that you do need to focus, and those things that are brought to attention, if they somehow elevate in the level of importance, it brings it right to the top.
If I could just add on, and I think Mark said it at the beginning, it's about prioritization as well. So when you're looking in the mirror, you're developing your strategy, you have a whole list of capabilities that you need to improve on or move in that direction to make that future state true. At the same time, almost all companies have limited resources. So since you don't have a blank checkbook, part of the process is to really articulate, what am I going to do now? What can I do next? And what can I do in the future? So you have, imagine, for just envisioning purposes, imagine you got your Post-it notes all over the place that really represent all the stuff that you're kind of faced with challenging. But how do I put order to that? And how do I put order to that so I'm making progress, and I'm doing that first things first, second things second. So most likely it doesn't start with going out to the floor and buying a new piece of software. It probably starts with foundational thing. I mean, we heard this earlier today.
Right.
If your foundation isn't solid, Larry talked about doing things in parallel, the hidden stuff plus the cool stuff, kind of doing that in parallel. That's what this process really ensures happens.
No, I love that. And that actually brings up a good point. So I know as we've been hearing all these conversations about all the very exciting things that are going on, how do you start addressing certain things? It brings up the concept of burnout. So I know, as you're mentioning, prioritizing things, but I know burnout's very real, especially since this is not the fastest system. You don't say, I want to have digital capabilities, and then a week later you have it. So how have you guys been addressing burnout in your own journeys?
Well, defer to them because we are not that
Gotcha.
far yet.
Okay,
That's the
yes.
problem.
Well, certainly, and again, it's been mentioned through several presentations, a network is going to help big time, right? So you get to, that learning curve can shift significantly if you're utilizing the networks, and obviously, this event helps facilitate that as well. Getting involved with the right teams, with CESMII and Manufacturing Works here can assist in that. And then internally, trying to, as a management team, you've got to make sure you're providing that support, you're backing the process, and you're giving the resources that are necessary to see it through. And again, the pace can be at whatever pace you want to move at. You set the pace, right? So wherever you want to see that end result, that's your call. The tools are there. You just have to make sure you have the resources available to work those tools, to make them your own, and as Jim was saying, and really create this roadmap that Mark described as your own roadmap. And whatever amount of time it takes, they're very comfortable with that. They're flexible within that, but at the same time, there's that accountability where they're saying, hey, you said a couple weeks ago we're going to have this. How you doing? What's going on? What can we do to help? That's a rare term to hear, phrase to hear in these days, right? What can I do to help? That's what I've found within the network that we've been working with. And then likewise, for other people who are on the journey, they create these cohorts, and that's one of the bigger, not only as an outcome from this event, but within the CESMII program itself, is creating these cohorts of companies who are sharing similar themes, right? Whatever we may be facing, that there's similarity and there's synergy, we have the opportunities to communicate. Mark and I have communicated previously before this meeting, and we'll continue to communicate going forward. And there's several other people within this room. Likewise, we've both done the same. So there's strength in numbers, there's synergies to be built, and just opportunities for all of us to do great things in this area.
Here's what I'd add on this whole burnout thing. Listening to Kurt/Brandon and Tim, who wouldn't be excited about that? That was exciting stuff that you guys just presented on. And so part of the roadmap is get those exciting cases out there. So when I say, what can I do now? Make sure you've got quick wins built in there. Stuff that you can do sprints on, stuff that you can do 30 days, 2 weeks, 90 days. If your roadmap is full of projects that take 2 years to get done, the staying power of that is not motivating. People just move on. They don't see anything. So you need to have the excitement of and the freedom to do things in a structured way that has a purpose for it. but celebrate those quick wins and make sure you've got them on your schedule.
I love that. Especially as somebody who every day starts off with my top 3 things I'm going to do today because it brings me joy to check something off. I think it's really important to have those quick wins built in, to not just prevent burnout, but keep up the excitement, keep up the momentum. And as you look back, you can reflect on, these are all the things we've accomplished. It's not going to, we have small wins built into this, so it's not just at the end of this, we have one win. You could look back and reflect and see all the things that you've done to keep you going. So I love all of that. I know we have about 10 minutes. I know I have a million more questions I can ask you guys, but I would love to open it up to the room in case there's any additional questions from our audience.
Get one right over here. Paul Bachman with NxGen Inc. As I've heard this today on the roadmap, focus on people, process, technology, right? Not pretty much in that order. Has it solely been on the digital transformation for smart manufacturing, or is this tool capable of expanding to other places of the business, like a sales channel or marketing or product development or quality? Or is this solely focused on just the smart manufacturing digital transformation?
More closely related to the latter, Paul, we have not talked about sales as far as reinventing that, but these are all connected, right? So as an example, many organizations, we saw this, I think, from Nestle, what they talked about being consumer obsessed as their true north. When you think about the roadmap, if I knew that their true north is to be consumer obsessed, what does that imply to manufacturing? What information, what stuff do I need to do to be able to really satisfy that consumer? So indirectly, you know, it might be a sales kind of thing, but the tentacles into the manufacturing and supply chain are certainly there. Quality is obviously there. Product development is certainly there, but we're not trying to improve like the stage gate or product development process per se. We want to just be aware of the product development impact.
Yeah, and we had a initiative around continuous improvement. We had an initiative around quality, around on-time shipments, all going on that are all going to dovetail with this. That was part of what led me to jump on the roadmap. Is it helps tie all the other projects we have going around into one.
Brian Carroll from DuPont. Question for Jim. So regarding the assessment, maybe just a little further question on, you know, what's the organizational commitment to participating? What's the duration? And then at the end of the day, when you finish the process, what's the output of that activity?
Yeah, so we have an assessment survey that is crowdsourced. So what we've learned is that if you're trying to understand the current state of your organization, if you just talk to like the head of digital transformation or whatever that job is, digital officer, what they say is not necessarily what the organization says, right? So you'll find a difference between mechanics and operators and plant managers and so on and so on. So we crowdsourced this survey to as broad an audience as makes sense. So the organizational commitment starts with, you're going to send out a crowdsourced survey to a bunch of people that are going to take their time to fill this thing out. They're going to want to know why you're doing this. So are you just signaling to the organization that you started a smart manufacturing journey and you're serious about this, and the first step is to understand where you are and what your gaps are? If you only interviewed one person, you could keep it secret, right? You could say, okay, the digital officer talked to CESMII or talked to me and got this answer, and then you don't have to deal with the ramifications. So the organizational commitment is, you're sending a signal that we're starting this capability and we're serious about it. And then if you've done that, then you better be serious about it because they're expecting certain behaviors to happen. So what's the rest of that story is you get a report out into a capability matrix, which are these 6 dimensions that Sophie talked about, that are around manufacturing excellence and culture, manufacturing strategy and leadership, data-driven processes, systems infrastructure and integration, optimizing people, and supply chain agility and resiliency. Those are your 6 kind of categories. And there's a matrix, a score system from reactive to adaptive, 1 to 5. And it says, you are here. Now, the most powerful part of that is since we are crowdsourcing, not using an individual, we then can scatter plot the responses across that to see spread. We can look at the individual questions and see contrary responses. Oh, how come half your people say you're underperforming against your production metrics and half your people say you're overperforming? Maybe people don't even know what your metrics are, right? So looking at the individual questions, getting that spread of response, looking for alignment, that's kind of the first step of what you get out of this is, where are you? Now that we've done enough of these, we can also benchmark you against other companies like yours and say, you're ahead, behind. But that's not even, people ask for that, and I go, how is that relevant? You're trying to run your business. I don't really care where these guys are. I want to run my business to meet my goals. But anyhow, they asked that question. The biggest thing, though, is this alignment of disparity between functions and between people. And if you don't get your alignment right, that aligning your organization to your business outcomes and to your functions was the number 1 and number 2 reason for 70 to 90% of your projects failing. That's why we did it as crowdsourced. Larry.
Hi, so Larry Meekin, BRF. So I really question for Mark and Doug, really around culture. So I'm going to assume that you guys have a culture of innovation around your end product. Always trying to make that end product or end products better to serve your customer needs. And have you thought about how to bring that same ethos to the digital space, right, and with your workforce?
So yes, it is absolutely. It kind of ties into what Jim was saying before, where how did you come up with safety? How did you come up with quality as part of the core elements of your business, right? And so you have to look at this the same way. This has to become a cultural aspect for it to be successful. That the buy-in has to be in there, the participation has to be there, and you have to definitely have that mindset of ingraining it into the culture and getting that as one of your core elements, because first of all, we all know it's not going to stop, right? I mean, just this innovation is going to continue on no matter what, at a pace that just continues to accelerate as we go along. So, where they're in the heydays, if you will, of when safety, job 1, right? Safety's job 1, and we all know the cliches, and everything else. Quality, same thing. Everything went through their season to transform it into a cultural event. We're in that season now with this, and it has to be taken equally as serious as safety or quality. And so, yes, it is absolutely a cultural aspect.
Yeah, and in our case, we're a mature company with a mature product line. Innovation isn't how I would describe our products, but it is something we're trying to bring into our processes. And especially in trying, in the initiatives we have, we require every employee of the company to be working in one of the areas. It might be safety, it might be continuous improvement, it might be part of our ISO team, our 5S team, but every employee is a part of at least one of those initiatives.
I love that. That's as I've heard in my former life from previous supervisors, what interests my boss thrills the hell out of me. So it's, hey, if you're showing interest, it's hopefully those around you can take interest in it as well. And also it's really leading by example. So I think it's very admirable that you guys are making it known, this is important for us. We're not just going to talk it, but we're going to back it up, making sure that it's ingrained into all the different elements of the job, of the roles at your company. So I think that that's incredibly important. So as we have a few minutes left, I just wanted to recap a couple of the things that we've talked about where it's, there needs to be a mindset shift. We cannot put the cart in front of the horse. Crawl, walk, run, don't just shoot from the hip. There's no pre-canned solutions. Everybody's going to have their own recipe. I think that's incredibly important. We're all on our own journey. I don't care what they're doing next door. This is our journey. This is our roadmap. And then collaboration and support from our ecosystem partners. So we've heard, obviously, fantastic, the roadmap that's been put out by CESMII Manufacturing Works through NxGen as well. And the collaboration there for you guys to create your own recipe. Seeing what's being done at the Edmis Center and the Keystone collaboration, seeing that collaboration there. So I think the network is so important. So be engaged, use these tools. The region has these tools. We want manufacturers to be as competitive as possible. And we want these collaborations. So I really appreciate you guys and your time. So thank you very, very much.